I'm going to show you a different way of lashing onto the front warping stick today. It's kind of a combination of lashing on and what I do when I use a floor loom to do the warp on my back beam. So what I'm doing is I'm just taking quite small bundles and I'm just doing an overhand knot. I'm trying to make it so that my knots are all at about the same length so that the knots are coming to the same spot in the warp. And I am using fairly small bundles, so just doing an overhand knot here. And pulling it nice and snug. It doesn't need to be exactly the same length as everything else. So I like this because it's actually easier than lashing on and it seems to work well. I've done it a couple of times. This is a really short project, narrow warp, so it's a nice one to try something new on. Okay, so I've got all my knots. They're not exactly the same, but they're similar in length. The next thing I need are string heddles. So if you have done a string heddle project with me before, you'll know that I like the pre-made Texlov heddles. This is, I think, a 9.5 inch. It's one of the Leclerc, the shortest one from the Leclerc. And let's just zoom out a bit here so you can see what's happening. So I have all my knots here. I'm going to take one string heddle and put my finger through the loop. I'm going to pull. Oh, first of all, I'm going to put it on the warping stick. So I'm just going to loop it through so it's attached to the warping stick. Then I'm going to open up the loop here. I'm going to grab down here and I'm going to pull it through so that I have a loop that as I tighten it, it will tighten. Then I'm going to hold that open. I'm going to grab my knot. I'm going to insert my knot. And I'm just going to let that pull tight. So let's walk through that again with the next one. I have my string heddle. I'm going to fasten it to my front warping stick. I'll open up that upper loop, grab the lower loop, pull it through so I have a loop here, grab the knot, and I just want to make sure that my knot is above the loop. So here's my knot, here's my loop. So all my ends are attached to the front warping stick here, and now I can just lock that and wind forward. And there we are ready to weave. The tension, if I feel the tension back here, it's all great. It feels perfectly even. It's fabulous. So I highly recommend this. I think it's a great way of tying on to the front warping stick, especially if you don't need a fringe. So from here, I'm just going to add my 2 extra warping sticks in to spread my warp, and then I'm ready to weave.